Voice from the loft. My family moved to this standard upscale suburban home after roughing it for a couple of years to save up. We also got a deal on the home because it was a model home before it was ours, like had all the fake furniture to show off the neighborhood homes. Anyways, it had this loft area with 2 stairwells that go up to it, one in the front and one in the back. You could pretty much hear everything from this loft since it was so open. One day my 2 best friends, guy and a girl, are hanging out in the loft. We were watching TV and I get up to take a piss. When I came back, they were on different ends of the couch. They had gotten into a fight, so I asked what was up. "Your little sister is home," the dude says. My face turned sheet white. "What's wrong?" the girl asked. I asked them what made them think that. They said they heard her. I am sort of freaking out at this point. "No one's here," I say. We check the house, and I'm right. Well, it turns out that before it was a model home, a family lived there and a little girl had been playing in the loft, but had climbed on the railing and fell to her death below. My 2 best friends swear to this day that they heard what they thought was my sister laugh and run up the stairs, hitting her hands on each step like she was running up on all 4s. I never had any encounters, other than the fact that right next to where she landed was the house's central intercom. We had an intercom system in every room that you could play music through, or talk to each other. Every so often at night at the same time you'd wake up to the intercom button being pressed, and just the blank sound of static airways like someone was holding down the button but no one was speaking. My room was on the 3rd floor and I'd have to walk down to the bottom to the main unit, and turn it off there. I always thought I'd see her.
Her best friend's ghost. Last year I was staying in a hotel with my mom. One of the nights as I was laying in bed I noticed a human silhouette maybe 2 meters away from me. I figured it was just a shadow, so I tried to ignore it, but I couldn't. I turned the light on and obviously it disappeared, but when I shut off the lights again it came back. I tried to convince myself that it was just a shadow, but trust me when I say there was nothing in that room that could have made a shadow like that. I looked around the room several times. It also occurred to me that the shadow wasn't there the previous nights, and nothing had been moved around. It looked just like a human silhouette. I never believed in ghosts, but right then and there I was terrified. I was too scared to look at it, so I turned around and eventually fell asleep. I told my mom about it the next morning, and she just shrugged it off. She said I was just imagining things. Fair enough. That shadow wasn't there the next night. Or the next. A few days after we had gotten back home, my mom was doing something in the kitchen, and I was just sitting there studying. Without turning around, my mom said, "Do you remember that shadow of a person you saw at the hotel?" I said, "Yeah." My mom just said, "I saw it too." My blood turned to freaking icy. Mom didn't want to admit that she also saw it. I thought that she was sleeping, because she didn't want to freak me out. I'm convinced that if ghosts exist, I saw one that night. My mom thinks it was the ghost of her best friend, who had committed suicide just a few days prior. Mom had spent hours earlier that evening writing her a long letter for some kind of closure. Maybe her best friend also wanted to say goodbye.
My sister had the same nightmare. When I was around 10 years old, I had this super disturbing dream. It started out with me in my house, alone, during the day. It's a small house, several minutes' walk to the closest neighbor, and more or less surrounded by woods. I heard something coming down the driveway, like tires crunching in the gravel, but much slower. Went out on the porch to investigate, and saw an old-fashioned covered wagon being pulled down the driveway. For some reason, this filled me with dread, and I ran back inside to lock all the doors. Once that was done, I walked down the staircase into the basement, where I knew I could see him from the window built into the door. The wagon stopped moving once I was watching, and the man climbed down from the seat and stood in front of it. He was dressed in a black suit with a black top hat, and he was looking right at me through the window glass. Once he was sure that I saw him, he walked to the back of the wagon and pulled off the cover. There were people hanging from the supports at the top of the wagon, feet dangling, rope around their necks. They looked dead, but the man in the top hat did something and their heads started inflating. It got to the point where it looked almost cartoonish, eyes bulging out, red faces, the works. He kept looking at me while he did it, and I just knew he was gonna do the same thing to me. Woke up absolutely terrified, and to make things 1,000 times worse, the power was out, meaning it took me a ridiculous amount of time to make my way into my parents' room and camp out on their floor. Here's the creepy bit. I never told anyone about this particular dream because it was so freaking weird. Maybe 2 years ago, my family and I got into a conversation about the freakiest dreams we'd had. I figure what the hell, it's been 10 years, I can probably bring it up without hyperventilating. So I start telling the story, leaving out a lot of details for brevity's sake, and when I get to the part about the wagon coming down the driveway, my younger sister gets the weirdest look on her face and says, "Was the man wearing a top hat?" We quizzed each other, and we remembered most of the details in the same way. I can't quite figure out how we both had the same dream, though I think a likely explanation might be that one of us told the other about the dream and then forgot, and the other party just constructed their own memory of it. But I distinctly remember not telling anyone about it because I thought it was too weird to share. I still get freaked out when I think about it, and to date, that's probably the strangest dream I've had.